They set up a single dad on a blind date with a deaf, obese billionaire, and his tears moved everyone. The fluorescent lights of Mel Brock Hotel's maintenance corridor hummed their usual monotonous tune as Ryan Walker wrung out his mop for what felt like the 1,000th time that week. His blue uniform, worn but impeccably clean, bore the slight dampness of honest work, and his yellow gloves squeaked against the mop handle. 30 years old, 5 days a week in this corridor, and he still found dignity in making these floors shine. That's what his father had taught him before the cancer took him. Every job done well is a job worth doing. Through the service window, he could see the hotel lobby glittering with the kind of wealth he'd never possess. Marble columns reached toward crystal chandeliers, and guests in designer clothes chatted over champagne that cost more than his weekly salary. But Ryan didn't feel bitter. He'd learned long ago that envy was a poison you drank yourself, hoping someone else would die. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it with still gloved hands, careful not to drip water on the screen. Marcus. Dude, tonight, 7 p.m. Giancarlo's on 5th. You're meeting someone. Ryan groaned audibly. Marcus had been his best friend since high school, the kind of friend who'd helped him rebuild his life after the accident that left him with a titanium rod in his left leg and fluency in American Sign Language he never thought he'd need. But Marcus had one fatal flaw. He thought Ryan needed saving from his simple life. Ryan. No, absolutely not. Last time you set me up, she spent 2 hours talking about her CrossFit routine. Marcus. This one's different, man. Trust me. CEO, smart, been through some stuff, you'll connect. Ryan. I don't connect with CEOs. I clean their floors. Marcus. 7 p.m. Tables reserved under Walker, don't make me look bad. I already told her about you. Ryan. Told her what exactly? Marcus. That you're a good man who deserves someone special. Now stop mopping and go home. You smell like industrial cleaner. Ryan sighed, pocketing his phone. He glanced at his reflection in the polished floor. 30 years old, weathered hands, eyes that had seen both the bottom and learned to find beauty there. His Harley Davidson was his one indulgence. That blue beast sitting in the parking garage that made him feel alive every time he rode it. Built it himself from scraps, every bolt turned with his own hands. Walker. The voice of Mr. Henderson, the daytime shift manager, echoed down the corridor. You're needed in the executive wing. Spill in the conference room. Ryan grabbed his supplies and headed toward the elevator, the one that went to the top floors where people like him were invisible. The executive wing smelled different. Expensive perfume, leather-bound books, power. He knocked softly before entering, keeping his eyes down out of habit. The conference room was empty except for the spill. Someone's overturned coffee creating an abstract pattern on the imported rug. As he worked, he noticed a photograph on the table, left behind from whatever meeting had just concluded. It showed a younger woman, maybe 25, blonde, laughing at a beach somewhere beautiful. She was fuller figured than the stick-thin models on magazine covers, real in a way that made the photo more intimate. That's the owner. Mr. Henderson had appeared in the doorway. Ms. Davenport inherited this place 3 years ago when her father died. Keeps to herself mostly. Lives in that mansion on Riverside Drive alone, they say. Ryan carefully cleaned around the photo, not touching it. Must be lonely, he said quietly. Living in a house that big with no one to share it with. That's what happens when you're born with everything, Henderson replied. You forget how to let people in. After his shift, Ryan went home to his small apartment above the motorcycle repair shop where he worked nights and weekends. The place was modest. 1 bedroom, a living room that doubled as his workshop, walls covered with blueprints and vintage bike posters. But it was his, every inch of it earned. He showered, changed into his only decent shirt, a blue button-down that matched his eyes, and stared at himself in the mirror. The accident 7 years ago had left him with a slight limp, barely noticeable unless you knew to look for it. The same accident that had sent him flying off his bike and into the path of a deaf teenager who'd been standing on the sidewalk. She'd helped him, called 911, stayed with him until the ambulance came. In the hospital, recovering, unable to speak through the pain, a nurse who knew ASL had taught him the basics. Later, consumed by guilt and gratitude, he'd learned it fluently, volunteering at the Deaf Community Center every Sunday. He never knew what happened to that girl. She'd disappeared before he could thank her. At 6:45 p.m., Ryan fired up his Harley, the engine's roar his favorite symphony. The blue paint caught the streetlights as he weaved through evening traffic, arriving at Giancarlo's exactly at 7. It was the kind of restaurant where the waiters wore tuxedos, and the wine list was thicker than most novels. The host looked him up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" "Reservation under Walker." "Ah, yes. Your companion has already arrived. This way." Ryan followed him through the restaurant, acutely aware of his second-hand shirt among the designer suits. Then he saw her. She sat alone at a corner table, back straight despite her size, wearing a royal blue blazer that somehow made her look both powerful and vulnerable. Her blonde hair was pulled back, revealing a face that was beautiful not despite its fullness but because of the character etched into every expression. She was reading something on her phone, unaware of his approach, unaware of how every man in the restaurant had glanced at her with that particular mixture of judgment and fascination society reserves for women who dare to take up space. Then she looked up, and Ryan's world stopped. Those eyes, blue as a summer sky. He knew those eyes. She was the girl from the accident. 7 years older, perhaps 70 pounds heavier, but unmistakably her. The girl who'd saved his life. Her expression shifted from polite greeting to shock, and her hand moved almost unconsciously to her throat. Recognition flickered across her face like lightning. Ryan approached the table slowly, his mind racing, heart pounding so hard he was certain everyone in the restaurant could hear it. 7 years. 7 years of looking, of wondering, of carrying the memory of blue eyes that had seen him at his most vulnerable and hadn't turned away. And now those same eyes were looking at him again, older, wiser, carrying their own weight of pain and survival. She stood, a gesture that made her height and presence even more commanding, and Ryan saw every head in the restaurant turn to watch. Some looked curious, others looked judgmental, a few looked uncomfortable, as if a woman of her size taking up space in a place this elegant was somehow offensive. Ryan felt anger flare in his chest, hot and protective. Couldn't they see what he saw? Couldn't they see the strength it took to walk into a room like this, knowing how people would look at her and hold her head high anyway? That's when he saw her hands move in a gesture he recognized immediately. Fluid, graceful, the universal sign for hello in ASL, but hesitant, as if she wasn't quite sure he'd understand. She was signing. "Ryan?" His hands moved without thinking. Muscle memory from 1,000 Sunday mornings at the community center, from countless hours practicing alone in his apartment, from the belief that someday, somehow, this skill would matter. Celeste? Her eyes, those incredible blue eyes that he'd seen in his dreams for 7 years, filled with tears immediately. She covered her mouth with both hands, overcome, her whole body trembling. Around them, other diners had started to notice the silent exchange, heads turning with frank curiosity. The couple at the next table stopped mid-bite. The waiter hovering nearby froze with his wine bottle suspended in mid-air. Ryan pulled out her chair, gesturing for her to sit with a small, encouraging smile, then took his own seat across from her. For a long moment, a moment that felt suspended outside of normal time, they just stared at each other. Two people whose lives had intersected 7 years ago in tragedy, whose paths had diverged into entirely different worlds, and who were now sitting across from each other in this impossibly expensive restaurant, connected by an invisible thread that neither had been able to sever. Ryan noticed everything about her in that moment. The way her royal blue blazer fit perfectly across her shoulders but strained slightly at the buttons, a reminder that the fashion industry still couldn't quite accommodate women who looked like real people. The way her blonde hair was pulled back in a style that was professional but not severe, revealing the elegant line of her neck and the small hearing aid behind her right ear that he wouldn't have noticed if he didn't know to look for it. The way her hands trembled slightly as they rested on the white tablecloth, her nails painted a soft pink that seemed almost defiant in its femininity. She was beautiful, not despite her size, not despite her disability, but in a way that transcended all of those superficial judgments. She was beautiful the way sunsets are beautiful, complex, layered, impossible to capture in a single word or image. "I looked for you," he signed, his hands moving with the fluidity of native speakers. "After the hospital, I wanted to thank you. You saved my life. You remembered me." She signed back, and the joy in her movements was palpable. "After all this time." "Your eyes," he signed. "I could never forget those eyes." A waiter approached, confused by the silence. Celeste pulled out a small notepad she kept in her purse. Ryan recognized it as the kind deaf people often carried for communication with hearing people who didn't sign, and wrote, "He'll have water, I'll have the same. Give us a moment, please." When the waiter left, she wrote on the pad and slid it across to Ryan. "Marcus is your friend? He works in my hotel security division. He told me about you. A good man who'd been through hard times. He didn't mention the accident. He didn't mention." Me. Ryan borrowed her pen and wrote back. He doesn't know about the accident. I never told anyone the details. Just that I learned ASL after a bike crash. They stared at each other, the weight of 7 years and multiple lifetimes between them. I need to ask. Ryan signed, then paused, gathering courage. Was this setup intentional? Did you know it was me? Celeste shook her head vigorously, signing with emphasis. No, I swear. Marcus said he had a friend who was too good for his own good and needed someone who understood struggle. I agreed because... She paused, her hands trembling slightly. Because I've been alone for 3 years since my divorce and I'm tired of being alone. I didn't know it was you. I didn't dare hope. Ryan reached across the table and took the pen, writing slowly. Why didn't you look for me? After the accident? Celeste's face crumpled and she signed with visible emotion. I did. I came to the hospital the next day, but you were already discharged. I asked at the desk, but they couldn't give me information. I left my number with a nurse, but you never called. I thought maybe you didn't want to be reminded of that day. I never got your number. Ryan signed back, his own hands shaking now. God, Celeste. I spent months trying to find you. I went back to that corner, asked everyone, nothing. They sat in silence for a moment, processing the cruelty of near misses and missed connections. Then Celeste picked up her pen and wrote something that changed everything. There's something you need to know. About why I'm here tonight. About why Marcus really set this up. Ryan's stomach tightened. He nodded for her to continue. She wrote carefully, her hand trembling. I'm deaf because of a medical condition. Auditory neuropathy. It got worse after my father died. But there's more. The same condition is degenerative. The doctors say I have maybe 2 years before it affects my nervous system more severely. I could lose more than just my hearing. Ryan's throat tightened. He took her hand across the table, not caring who saw, and signed with his free hand. Does Marcus know? She nodded, tears streaming freely now. He's one of 3 people who know. He said he had a friend who understood ASL, who'd been through pain, who might not run away when he learned the truth. I agreed to this blind date because I'm tired of being strong alone. I'm tired of people seeing only the fat deaf girl who inherited millions. I wanted one night with someone who might see me. I see you. Ryan signed, both hands now with such intensity that people at neighboring tables stopped their conversations to watch. Celeste, I've seen you since the moment you knelt beside me on that sidewalk 7 years ago. You were the most beautiful person I'd ever encountered, not because of how you looked, but because you stayed. You stayed when you could have walked away. Celeste was openly weeping now, her shoulders shaking. Ryan stood, moved his chair beside hers and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face against his shoulder, her body trembling with sobs that were silent but no less powerful. Around them, the restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners watched this blue-collar man in his second-hand shirt, holding this blonde woman in her designer blazer, watched her cry into his shoulder while his hands rubbed gentle circles on her back. An older woman at the next table reached for her husband's hand, her own eyes glistening. After several minutes, Celeste pulled back, wiping her eyes with her napkin. She pulled out her notepad and wrote, I'm sorry. This isn't how blind dates are supposed to go. Ryan took the pen and wrote back, This isn't a blind date anymore. This is a reunion. And you have nothing to apologize for. She smiled through her tears, then signed, Tell me about your life, these 7 years. Tell me everything. And so Ryan did. He told her about the months of physical therapy, about learning ASL not just for communication, but as a form of meditation, a way to make peace with silence. He told her about his work at the hotel, about finding dignity in making floors shine, about his nights at the repair shop where he brought dead motorcycles back to life. He told her about his apartment above the shop, about living simply because simplicity brought him peace. And the Harley? She signed. The blue one. Do you still have it? Rebuilt it myself. He signed back. Every bolt, every wire. It's my meditation. Celeste's face transformed, a smile breaking through like sunrise. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos, then turned the screen toward him. It was a Harley Davidson, pristine condition, the same shade of blue as his own, parked in what looked like a massive garage. That was my father's, she signed. He loved that bike more than anything. When he died, I couldn't ride it. I never learned how, but I couldn't sell it either. It just sits there in my garage, waiting. Ryan stared at the photo, something clicking in his mind. What year? She showed him the specs. 1987, Harley Davidson lowrider, custom blue paint. Original owner, Thomas Davenport. Ryan's hand went to his mouth. Celeste, my bike. The one I rebuilt. I bought the frame at an estate sale 3 years ago. The sale was for. He couldn't finish, the realization too enormous. My father's estate, she signed, understanding dawning on her face. After he died, my mother sold everything she couldn't bear to keep. The motorcycle, his tools, his collection. You bought. I've been riding your father's bike for 3 years. Ryan finished, stunned. I've been riding your father's bike and working in your hotel and never knew we were connected. Celeste laughed then, a soundless laugh that shook her whole body, her hands moving in joy. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, or perfect timing, Ryan signed back. They ordered food eventually, simple pasta for him, risotto for her, but neither could eat much. They were too busy talking, hands flying, sharing 7 years of separate lives that somehow always seemed to orbit each other. Celeste told him about inheriting Mel Brock at 22, about being thrust into a world of corporate boards and shareholders who saw her as a child playing dress-up, about her marriage to a man who'd loved her father's money more than he'd loved her, about the divorce that left her wealthy but alone, about waking up one morning deaf, the auditory neuropathy stealing her hearing overnight, about the additional diagnosis that came later, the degenerative nature of her condition. I have money, she signed, her movements heavy with irony. Enough money to buy anything except more time. Enough money to hire the best doctors who all tell me the same thing. Enjoy what you have while you have it. How much time? Ryan signed gently. 2 years before the nerve damage spreads. Maybe 3. They can't say for sure. After that. She shrugged, the gesture somehow both defeated and defiant. After that I might lose mobility. I might lose more than that. So I decided to stop waiting for life to happen. Hence the blind date. Ryan was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he signed, Do you want to go for a ride? What? After dinner. Do you want to go for a ride on your father's bike? Let me take you home the way your dad would have wanted you to travel. Feeling the wind, feeling alive. Celeste's eyes widened. I've never been on a motorcycle. Then it's time, Ryan signed with a smile. Besides, technically it's your bike. I'm just the custodian. She laughed again, that beautiful silent laugh, and nodded. They left Giancarlo's an hour later after Ryan insisted on paying despite Celeste's protests. She'd signed that she could buy the entire restaurant if she wanted, to which he'd signed back that this wasn't about money. It was about respect, about showing her that he valued what they'd shared tonight. She'd relented, but he could see the emotion in her eyes, the understanding that this simple gesture meant something deeper. Outside, his blue Harley sat under a streetlight like a piece of functional art, chrome gleaming, the paint job he'd spent months perfecting catching the light like water. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain that might come later, mixed with the urban perfume of exhaust and restaurant kitchens and possibility. It's beautiful, Celeste signed, approaching the bike slowly, reverently. She ran her hand along the chrome, her fingers tracing the curves with the kind of care you'd use touching something sacred. My father would have loved what you did with it. He'd have been so proud. He would have loved you more, Ryan signed back, moving to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Any father would be proud to have a daughter who runs an empire with grace, who faces every day with courage even when the world judges her for existing, who agrees to blind dates even when she's terrified. You're remarkable, Celeste. She turned to look at him, tears threatening again. He was beginning to realize that tears were her language when words, even signed words, weren't enough. How do you do that? She signed. How do you say exactly what I need to hear? Like you can read my soul? Because I see you. He signed simply. Really see you. He helped her onto the bike behind him, his hands gentle on her waist as he guided her into position. He showed her where to hold on, the grab handles on the sides, or his waist, if she felt more comfortable. She chose his waist, her arms wrapping around him tentatively at first, her body stiff with nervousness. You have to trust me, he signed before putting on his helmet. Trust the bike, trust yourself, let go of fear and just feel. She nodded, and he felt her arms tighten slightly around his waist. Even through his jacket he could feel her warmth, her heartbeat against his back, the way her breathing was quick and shallow with anticipation and fear. He started the engine, and even though she couldn't hear the roar, she could feel it. The vibration traveling through the frame, through her body, awakening something primal and alive. He felt her gasp against his back, felt her arms tighten further. Then they were moving. Ryan took it slow at first, letting her adjust to the sensation of motion, to the way the bike leaned into turns, to the way the world looked different when you were on 2 wheels instead of 4. Through the mirror, he could see her face, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, expression caught between terror and exhilaration. They rode through the city, Ryan taking the long route, deliberately avoiding highways and choosing streets where they could feel the rhythm of urban life. Past the financial district where glass towers reflected streetlights like captured stars. Through neighborhoods where families sat on stoops, where children played tag under street lamps, where life happened in its messy, beautiful ordinariness. Past the river where lights reflected on water like an impressionist painting, where bridges stretched across darkness like connections between worlds. With each mile, he felt Celeste's body relaxing into the rhythm of the ride. Her grip on his waist changed from desperate clutching to confident holding. She started leaning with him into turns instead of fighting against the motion. He felt the exact moment she stopped being afraid and started being present. Her body softened against his back, her breathing deepened, and he could have sworn he felt her smile even though he couldn't see her face. At a red light, he glanced back at her. Her face was transformed. Pure joy, pure presence, pure life. Tears streaked her cheeks, but these were tears of something else, something bigger than sadness or fear. Liberation, maybe, or recognition that she was still capable of feeling this much, of being this alive. The light turned green and they continued. Ryan navigated through the city like it was a symphony he was conducting. Each turn deliberate, each acceleration measured, building toward something. 20 minutes later, he pulled up to an overlook he'd discovered years ago, a spot where the road curved along a hillside and the entire city spread out below them in an endless carpet of light and shadow and human ambition. They dismounted, and Celeste signed. "Thank you, that was. I've never felt anything like that." "Your father used to come here," Ryan signed, remembering the GPS history he'd found in the bike's saddlebags. Old routes saved from years ago. "I found his favorite spots programmed in. This was one of them." Celeste turned to look at the view, her back to him, shoulders trembling. Ryan moved closer, put his hand gently on her shoulder. She turned, tears streaming down her face again. "I miss him so much," she signed. "Every day. And I'm scared, Ryan. I'm so scared of what's coming. Of losing more. Of dying alone the way he did. Surrounded by things but no people." Ryan pulled her close, let her cry into his chest. Over her shoulder, he could see the city lights blurring through his own tears. When she finally pulled back, she signed. "Why did you stay? At the restaurant. When I told you about my condition, why didn't you run?" Ryan took her face in his hands, making sure she could see his signs clearly in the streetlight. "Because 7 years ago you stayed with me when I was broken on a sidewalk. Because everyone deserves someone who stays. Because," he paused, gathering courage for what came next. "Because I've been looking for you for 7 years. And now that I found you again, I'm not letting go. Not because you're rich, not despite your condition, but because you're you. You don't even know me," she signed back, but there was hope in her movements. "Then let me learn," Ryan signed. "However much time we have, 2 years, 20 years, 200, let me spend it learning every part of you." Celeste kissed him then, sudden and fierce, her hands in his hair, her body pressed against his. It was a kiss that tasted like salt and hope and desperation all mixed together. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "Take me home," she signed. "Not to drop me off. Take me home with you. I don't want to sleep in that empty mansion tonight. I want to sleep somewhere real with someone real." Ryan hesitated. "Celeste, my apartment is tiny. It's above a motorcycle shop. It smells like oil and coffee. There's motorcycle parts in the living room. It's perfect," she signed, cutting him off. "It's real. That's all I want. Something real." They rode to his apartment, and Ryan felt a flutter of embarrassment as they pulled up to the building. A 3-story structure that had seen better days, sandwiched between a laundromat and a bodega, with a motorcycle repair shop occupying the ground floor. His apartment was on the 3rd floor, accessed by an exterior staircase that creaked with every step. The paint was peeling. The railing wobbled. The door lock stuck sometimes. It was about as far from her mansion as you could get while still being in the same city. But when Celeste dismounted and looked up at the building, she signed, "It's perfect, it's real. That's all I want." He led her up the stairs, apologizing for the graffiti on the 2nd floor landing, for the broken light fixture, for the neighbor's yapping dog they could hear through thin walls. She just smiled and squeezed his hand as if to say none of it mattered. When he unlocked his apartment door and flipped on the lights, Celeste gasped, actually gasped out loud, a sound she probably couldn't hear herself make but didn't care, and laughed. It was a real laugh, unself-conscious, joyful, filling the small space with energy he hadn't realized it was missing. His apartment was exactly what he'd warned her about. Tiny, cluttered with motorcycle parts, smelling of oil and leather and strong coffee. But it was also undeniably alive in a way her mansion probably wasn't. Every surface told a story. The coffee table made from an old engine block. The bookshelf constructed from salvaged lumber and motorcycle chain. The walls covered not with expensive art, but with photos. Kids from the community center. Sunsets he'd photographed from his Harley. Mechanical diagrams he'd sketched himself. Celeste wandered through his space like an archaeologist discovering an ancient civilization. She touched everything. His tools hung on pegboards with the care of a surgeon's instruments. His books arranged by subject rather than color. His modest collection of vinyl records stacked beside a turntable that probably predated both of them. She picked up a photo from his bookshelf. Him with a group of deaf teenagers, all of them signing "I love you" at the camera. All of them grinning like they'd just discovered the secret to happiness. "Tell me about this," she signed, turning to face him with such genuine interest that his throat tightened. Ryan sat on his worn leather couch, a Craigslist find he'd reupholstered himself during a particularly long winter, and she sat beside him, not across from him in one of the mismatched chairs, not at a respectful distance, right beside him, close enough that their knees touched, close enough that he could smell her perfume mixed with the oil scent from his jacket that she'd borrowed for the ride. He told her about his Sunday mornings at the Deaf Community Center, about how he'd started volunteering 6 years ago right after he'd become fluent in ASL, about the teenagers who came in believing the world had no place for them, believing their deafness made them less than, believing they'd never be able to do skilled work or have real careers, about teaching them motorcycle maintenance because it was tactile visual, something that didn't require hearing to master. "I show them that disability isn't tragedy," he signed, his hands moving with passion. "It's just a different way of experiencing the world." One kid, Marcus, yeah, the same Marcus who set us up, he came in 3 years ago barely able to look anyone in the eye. Now he's working hotel security, studying criminal justice at night school, dating a hearing girl who learned ASL for him. Another kid, Sophie, she's at MIT now studying mechanical engineering. They send me photos of their projects, asking for advice. "Do they know?" Celeste signed. "About your accident? About how you learned ASL?" Ryan nodded. "I tell them my story when they're ready to hear it. About being angry after the accident. About feeling broken. About a deaf girl who stayed with me on a sidewalk when she could have walked away, who taught me that presence matters more than words. About learning ASL not because I had to, but because I wanted to honor her gift to me, the gift of staying." Celeste was crying again. She'd cried more tonight than in the past 3 years combined, but these tears felt different, cleansing maybe, or recognition that crying wasn't weakness but acknowledgement of depth. "I needed to hear that," she signed. "I've been treating my condition like a death sentence, like I'm broken and getting more broken. But you're right. It's just different. It's still okay to be scared." Ryan signed, reaching out to touch her face gently, wiping away tears with his thumb. "I'm scared too. Scared of losing you after just finding you. Scared of not being enough. Scared that tomorrow you'll wake up and realize that this is crazy, that I'm a janitor falling for a CEO, and everyone will say I'm after your money. Scared that I'll let you down when you need me most. I don't care what everyone says." Celeste signed with such fierce intensity that her whole body seemed to vibrate with it. "I've spent my whole life caring what people think. Did you see how they looked at me in that restaurant? The fat deaf girl daring to take up space in a place that elegant, the whispers, the stares. The calculation in their eyes about whether I belonged there. I'm done apologizing for existing. Done making myself smaller so others feel more comfortable. If I have 2 years or 20, I want to spend them with someone who sees me, who really sees me. And you do, Ryan. You see me in a way no one else ever has." Ryan felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd been holding closed since the accident, since his father died, since he'd learned that life could be both brutal and beautiful in the same breath. "I see you," he signed for what felt like the 100th time, because it was the truest thing he knew. "I see your strength, the kind that shows up every day even when every day is hard. I see your courage, agreeing to a blind date when you were terrified, getting on my bike when you'd never ridden before, letting me into your life when letting people in is the scariest thing of all. I see your heart, the way you care about your father's legacy, the way you light up when you talk about making the hotel accessible, the way you look at me like maybe I matter. I see all of it, Celeste. Every part. She kissed him then, and this kiss was different from the ones at the Overlook. Those had been about discovery, about possibility. This kiss was about choice, about deciding that despite all the obstacles and complications and impossibilities, they were going to try. Her hands went to his face, cradling it like something precious, and he pulled her closer, one hand on her back, the other in her hair, tasting salt and hope, and the faintest trace of the wine they'd shared at dinner. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Celeste signed something that made his heart stutter. "Can I stay? Just to sleep? I don't want to be alone tonight. I don't want to go back to that mansion where every room echoes with emptiness. I want to sleep somewhere real, with someone real, someone who makes me feel like maybe I'm not just marking time until the end." Ryan felt the weight of that request, understood what she was really asking. Not for sex, though God knew he wanted her, but for presence. For the radical act of being held without expectation, of sharing space without agenda, of simply existing together without performing or achieving or becoming. "Of course you can stay," he signed, then added carefully, "But I want to do this right. I'll take the couch, you take the bed. We have time, Celeste. We don't have to rush anything." "No," she signed back, and he saw determination in every movement. "That's not what I meant. Can we just lie together, hold each other? I haven't been touched in 3 years, Ryan. 3 years. Since my husband left, since I got fat and deaf and unlovable, since I learned that my body was failing me, no one has touched me with affection. No hugs, no hand-holding, no casual physical connection. I just want to be held by someone who doesn't see me as broken, who doesn't see me as a charity case, who sees me as human. Can we do that?" Ryan's heart broke and mended in the same moment. He understood that hunger. He'd felt it himself in the years after his accident, when people treated him like he was fragile, like touching him might shatter him into irreparable pieces. The loneliness of being untouchable even when surrounded by people. They lay on his bed fully clothed, Ryan on his back, Celeste curled into his side with her head on his chest. His hand traced slow circles on her arm while her hand rested over his heart, feeling it beat. "This is the strangest blind date in history," she signed with her free hand. "The best, though," he signed back, making her laugh silently against his chest. They fell asleep like that. Two people who'd been looking for each other for 7 years without knowing it, finally found. When Ryan woke at dawn, Celeste was still asleep, her face peaceful in the early light. He slipped out of bed carefully and made coffee, then sat at his tiny kitchen table, trying to process the impossibility of the last 12 hours. His phone buzzed. Marcus. "Well, how did it go? Did you thank me?" "Ryan, you're an interfering bastard and also possibly a genius. We need to talk." Marcus. "That good, huh? I knew you two would connect. She's special, man." Ryan. "You didn't tell me about her condition." Marcus. "Not my place to tell, but that's why I set this up. She needs someone who'll stay, someone who knows how to handle hard things. That's you, bro." Ryan. "I'm a janitor, Marcus. She's a CEO. Her father's death was in Forbes magazine. This is crazy." Marcus. "Love usually is. Don't overthink it. Just be there." Ryan set his phone down and looked up to find Celeste standing in his bedroom doorway, wearing his flannel shirt over her clothes from last night. She looked soft and rumpled and achingly beautiful. "Good morning," she signed with a shy smile. "Coffee?" he signed back. She nodded, moved to sit across from him at his small table. He poured her a cup, and they sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just looking at each other in the morning light. "I should go," she finally signed. "You probably have to work, and I have a board meeting at 10. "I don't want you to go," Ryan signed honestly. "I don't want to go either," she signed back, "but we should probably figure out what this is, what we're doing." Ryan reached across the table, took her hand. "What do you want this to be?" Celeste was quiet for a long moment, her thumb tracing circles on his palm. Then she signed. "I want to know you, really know you. I want more nights like last night, more rides on my father's bike, more mornings waking up in a place that feels like home even though I just met it. What about your mansion? What about it?" She signed with a shrug. "It's just a building. This," she gestured around his small apartment, "this is a home, because you're in it." "You barely know me," Ryan signed, echoing her words from the night before. "Then let me learn," she signed, using his own words. "However much time we have." Ryan nodded slowly. "Okay, but we do this right. No rushing. No shortcuts because of your diagnosis. We date, we learn each other, we build something real. Even though I'm your boss?" She signed with a teasing smile. Technically, you're my boss's 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 boss, he signed back. But yes, even though, people will talk, she signed, more serious now. Let them, Ryan signed. I've spent 7 years invisible. Maybe it's time people see me. See us. Celeste stood, moved around the table and sat in his lap, facing him. She took his face in her hands and signed slowly, carefully. Thank you for last night. For seeing me. For staying. Thank you for finding me again. He signed back. Even if it took 7 years and Marcus's meddling. She kissed him once more, then stood reluctantly. I should change. Can you take me home so I can get ready for work? Your carriage awaits, Ryan signed with a flourish. They rode through the morning city, rush hour just beginning, Celeste's arms wrapped tight around his waist. When they pulled up to her mansion, and it really was a mansion, gates and all, she dismounted reluctantly. Dinner tonight? She signed. My place. I'll cook. Or try to cook. Fair warning, I'm terrible at it. I'll bring ingredients and cook for you, Ryan signed back. 7 o'clock? Perfect, she signed, then hesitated. Ryan? Last night, you said you'd been looking for me for 7 years. Did you mean that? Every word, he signed. I signed up for every ASL class in the city hoping you'd be in one. I volunteered at the community center hoping you'd walk through the door. I rebuilt your father's bike hoping somehow it would lead me back to you. And it did. Celeste's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 100th time. What if we'd never met again? What if Marcus hadn't set this up? Then I would have died never knowing what I was missing, Ryan signed. But we did meet again. That has to mean something. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and signed, See you tonight. Ryan watched her walk through those enormous gates, watched them close behind her, then rode to the hotel for his shift. He mopped the same floors he'd mopped yesterday, but everything looked different now. The marble glowed brighter. The chandeliers sparkled with new meaning. This wasn't just a hotel. This was Celeste's legacy, her father's dream, the weight she carried. Around noon, Mr. Henderson found him. Walker, you're wanted upstairs. Ms. Davenport's office. Ryan's heart stopped. What? Don't ask me. Just go. And for God's sake, don't drip on the executive carpet. Ryan took the elevator to the top floor, his heart hammering. The receptionist, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, looked him up and down. Go on in, she's expecting you. He knocked, entered. Celeste sat behind an enormous desk, every inch the CEO in her royal blue blazer. But when she saw him, her whole face lit up. Close the door, she signed. He did. She stood, moved around the desk, and kissed him hard enough to make him forget where he was. When she pulled back, she signed, I needed to see you. I spent 3 hours in a board meeting and all I could think about was your face. Is that crazy? Probably. He signed back, grinning. But I like it. She pulled out a paper from her desk drawer and handed it to him. It was a contract. What's this? He signed, confused. Read it, she signed. Ryan scanned the document. It was a contract offering him a position as the hotel's director of accessibility and inclusion, focusing on making the hotel fully accessible to deaf and disabled guests. The salary was triple what he made as a janitor. He looked up at her, stunned. Celeste, I can't accept this. People will say, I don't care what people say, she signed firmly. I've been trying to fill this position for 6 months. Nobody gets it right. But you live it. You know what it's like to be invisible, to be underestimated, to have people assume you're less because of what you can't do. You're perfect for this job. And I need you here. Not mopping floors, though there's dignity in that too. But using your mind, your experience, your heart. This has nothing to do with last night. He signed carefully. Everything to do with last night. She signed back, honestly. Last night I remembered that business isn't just about profit, it's about people. My father knew that. I forgot it. You reminded me. Ryan stared at the contract, torn between pride and practicality. Can I think about it? Of course. She signed. But know this. Whether you take the job or not doesn't change us. Whether you're mopping my floors or redesigning my hotel, I still want you in my life. The job is just a job. What we have is something else. Ryan nodded slowly, folded the contract, put it in his pocket. I'll think about it, seriously. That's all I ask, she signed, then glanced at her watch. Now get out of here before Patricia starts rumors. Too late for that, Ryan signed with a grin. I think she photographed us kissing. Celeste laughed that beautiful, soundless laugh and pushed him toward the door. 7 o'clock, don't be late. Ryan worked the rest of his shift in a daze, the contract burning a hole in his pocket. At 6:30, he went home, showered, changed, and gathered ingredients for dinner. He decided to make his grandmother's lasagna. Simple, hearty, the kind of food that felt like home. He arrived at Celeste's mansion at exactly 7, carrying grocery bags and wine. She answered the door herself. No butler, no staff, wearing jeans and a simple white blouse, hair down around her shoulders, barefoot. "Hi," she signed with a smile that made his chest ache. "Hi yourself," he signed back. She led him through her mansion, and Ryan tried not to gawk at the sheer size of it. 17 rooms, she'd said. He counted at least that many just walking to the kitchen. But the kitchen was magnificent. Professional-grade appliances, marble countertops, windows overlooking gardens that probably needed 3 full-time gardeners. "This is your kitchen and you can't cook?" he signed in mock disbelief. "I have a chef who comes 3 times a week," she signed. "But I wanted to learn. Will you teach me?" So they cooked together. Ryan showed her how to layer the lasagna, how to season the sauce, how to know when pasta was perfectly al dente. She was a terrible cook. She burned the garlic, oversalted the sauce, forgot the pasta was boiling, but she laughed at every mistake, and Ryan couldn't remember the last time he'd had this much fun. They ate in her dining room at a table that could seat 20, just the 2 of them at one end, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about running the hotel, about the pressure of honoring her father's legacy while making it her own. He told her about his dreams of opening his own repair shop someday, about teaching kids that disability didn't mean inability. After dinner, she gave him a tour of the mansion, and he understood why she felt so alone. It was beautiful, but cold. Every room decorated by professionals who didn't know her at all, until they reached her father's study. This room was different. Lived in. Real. Photos covered the walls. Celeste as a baby, as a child, as a teenager. Her father in front of his hotel, arm around a younger Celeste who looked so proud. Bookshelves filled with motorcycle magazines and business journals. A desk covered in half-finished projects. "I haven't changed anything," she signed. "I come here when I miss him, when I need to feel like I'm not alone." Ryan moved to the photos, studying them. In one, a teenage Celeste stood beside her father and his blue Harley, both of them grinning. She was slimmer then, pre-hearing loss, but her eyes were the same, blue and bright and full of life. "You look like him," Ryan signed. "You have his eyes. I have his stubbornness too," she signed with a sad smile. He refused to slow down even when the doctors told him to. Worked himself to death building this empire. I inherited his dreams and his self-destructive tendencies. "You're not your father," Ryan signed gently. "You can honor his legacy without killing yourself for it." "Can I?" she signed, gesturing around the study. "Look at all of this. All he built. How do I walk away from that?" "Who says you have to walk away?" Ryan signed. "But maybe you can learn to share the load, delegate. Live a little instead of just surviving." Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she signed, "Will you help me? Not just with the hotel, with learning how to live again." "I've forgotten how." "Yes," Ryan signed without hesitation, "but you have to help me too." "With what?" "With believing I'm enough," he signed honestly. "With believing that a janitor can date a CEO without everyone saying he's a gold digger. With believing that what we have is real, and not just some fairy tale that'll end when reality sets in." Celeste moved close, took his hands and signed, "What we have is real. I don't care if you're a janitor or a mechanic or a millionaire. I care that you see me, the real me, not the money or the name or the mansion, the woman who's scared and lonely and dying slowly. You see her and you stayed. That's all that matters." They ended up on the couch in her father's study, talking until midnight, until Celeste fell asleep with her head on Ryan's shoulder. He carefully extracted himself, found a blanket, covered her and let himself out. As he rode home on the blue Harley, the cool night air washing over him, Ryan realized something profound. He'd spent 7 years looking for the girl who saved him, not knowing she'd been looking for him too. Not knowing they'd both been lost, both been alone, both been waiting for this impossible second chance. His phone buzzed at a red light. "Celeste. Celeste. I woke up and you were gone. Come back." "Ryan. It's late. You need sleep." "Celeste. I need you more. Please." Ryan turned the Harley around without a second thought. 20 minutes later, he was back at her mansion, and this time when she led him upstairs to her bedroom, an enormous space with a bed that could sleep 5 people, they lay down together fully clothed again, just holding each other in the darkness. "Tell me something true," she signed in the dim light from the window. "About what?" "About you. Something you've never told anyone." Ryan thought for a moment. After the accident, I wanted to die. The pain was so bad. The future looked so bleak. I was this close. He held up his fingers an inch apart, to ending it. But then I remembered you. The girl who stayed with me on that sidewalk. The girl who didn't leave even though she didn't know me, even though she had every reason to walk away. And I thought, if a stranger could care that much, maybe life was worth living. You saved me twice, Celeste. Once on that sidewalk and once in my mind every day after. She was crying again, silent tears tracking down her face. Now you tell me something true, he signed. She took a shaky breath. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of dying without ever really living. I'm afraid that when I'm gone, people will only remember the hotel heiress, the fat deaf girl who inherited millions. I'm afraid nobody will remember me, the real me, the girl who loved her father, the woman who wanted to make a difference, the person who just wanted someone to love her for her, not for what she had. I'll remember, Ryan signed, pulling her closer. For as long as I live, I'll remember every part of you. And if you'll let me, I'll help you live so fully that when your time comes, whether that's 2 years or 50, you'll have no regrets. Promise? She signed. Promise, he signed back, sealing it with a kiss. They fell asleep like that. 2 broken people learning how to be whole together. 2 lost souls who'd finally found home in each other's arms. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. Unaware that something remarkable had happened in that mansion on Riverside Drive, 2 people who'd been saving each other for 7 years had finally figured out they were meant to do it together. That love wasn't about saving it all, but about showing up, staying present, and choosing each other every single day. 3 months had passed since that impossible blind date, and Ryan Walker had learned that falling in love with Celeste Davenport was the easiest thing he'd ever done. Living with the knowledge that she was dying, that was the hard part. He'd taken the job as Director of Accessibility and Inclusion at Melbrook Hotel, despite the whispers from former co-workers about sleeping his way to the top. He'd moved some of his operations to Celeste's mansion, though he kept his apartment above the repair shop because it was his anchor, his reminder that he was still himself despite the changes. And he'd spent nearly every night with Celeste, learning the geography of her body and soul, where she liked to be touched, what made her laugh, how she signed differently when she was tired versus when she was passionate. But today was different. Today, Ryan sat in Dr. Helena Martinez's office while Celeste underwent her quarterly neurological assessment. The waiting room was too bright, too sterile, filled with magazines nobody read, and artificial plants that mocked the concept of life. His phone buzzed. Marcus, how's she doing, man? Ryan, waiting for results, praying for a miracle. Marcus, she's got you, that's already a miracle. Ryan pocketed his phone as the door opened. Celeste emerged first, her face unreadable, followed by Dr. Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the practiced neutrality of someone who delivered life-changing news for a living. Mr. Walker, Dr. Martinez said, Celeste would like you to join us. They returned to the consultation room and Ryan took Celeste's hand across the desk. It was trembling. Dr. Martinez opened a file, then looked directly at Celeste before signing as she spoke. She'd learned ASL specifically for Celeste, a gesture that had meant everything. The results are unexpected. The progression has slowed significantly. The latest scans show no new nerve damage. In fact, some of the inflammation markers have actually decreased. Ryan's heart stuttered. What does that mean? It means, Dr. Martinez signed and spoke simultaneously, that Celeste's prognosis has improved. We're now looking at potentially 5 to 7 years instead of 2, maybe more. We can't say for certain, this condition is unpredictable, but the current trajectory is remarkably positive. Celeste made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and covered her face with her hands. Ryan pulled her into his arms, his own eyes burning with tears he'd been holding back for 3 months. What changed? Ryan signed to the doctor when he could compose himself. Dr. Martinez smiled gently. Stress is a major factor in neurological degeneration. 3 months ago, Celeste was carrying the world alone. Now she has support, love, reasons to live beyond obligation. The human body responds to hope, Mr. Walker. You gave her that. After the appointment, they rode home on the Harley. Her father's Harley. Their Harley now. Celeste's arms wrapped around Ryan's waist felt different today. Lighter somehow, as if the weight of inevitability had been partially lifted. Back at the mansion, they sat in her father's study, the room that had become their sanctuary. Celeste pulled out a letter from her desk drawer, hands shaking as she signed. I need to show you something. I wrote this the night before our blind date. Read it. Ryan unfolded the paper, recognizing her handwriting immediately. Dear whoever finds this, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I want you to know that I tried. I really tried to keep going, to find meaning in the empire my father left me, to be the woman he believed I could be. But I'm so tired. Tired of being alone. Tired of being judged. Tired of being brave. Tomorrow I have a blind date. If it goes badly, if he looks at me with pity or disgust, or that particular kind of politeness that's worse than cruelty, I think I'll be done trying. I'll sell the hotel, give away the money, and disappear somewhere quiet where I can wait for the end in peace. But if there's any chance at all, that someone might see me, really see me, then maybe I'll keep fighting. Maybe. Celeste. Ryan's hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold the paper. Celeste. She signed through tears. You saved my life that night, Ryan. Not 7 years ago on a sidewalk. That night at Giancarlo's. I was done. I'd given up. And then you walked in. And you knew ASL. And you remembered me. And suddenly I had a reason to stay. You were my reason. You were my reason too. Ryan signed back, his voice breaking. After the accident, after my dad died, after everything fell apart, you were the one thing that kept me believing life could be beautiful. The girl who stayed. And then I found you again. And everything made sense. They held each other for a long time, crying and laughing and processing the impossible gift they'd just received. More time. Not forever, but more time. That evening, Ryan took Celeste to the Deaf Community Center for the first time. The kids gathered around her, curious about this beautiful blonde woman their teacher had been talking about for months. Sophie, now home from MIT for winter break, signed enthusiastically about her engineering projects. Marcus Jr., named after the friend who'd set everything in motion, showed Celeste the motorcycle he was rebuilding with Ryan's guidance. You're famous here. Celeste signed to Ryan with wonder. They love you. They saved me first. Ryan signed back. I'm just returning the favor. Watching Celeste interact with the kids, signing about her hotel, about accessibility, about never letting anyone make you feel small, Ryan realized something profound. She wasn't just fighting for more time. She was choosing what to do with the time she had, choosing to make a difference, choosing love over fear, choosing to live fully instead of waiting to die. On Christmas Eve, Ryan took Celeste to the overlook where they'd first kissed. The city sprawled below them, wrapped in holiday lights, every window a story of human connection and hope and ordinary miracles. He'd planned an elaborate proposal, dinner at Giancarlo's Flowers, the whole production. But standing there with her, the wind whipping her blonde hair around her face, her blue eyes reflecting the city lights, he realized elaborate wasn't them. Simple truth was them. He pulled out a ring, not expensive, just a simple silver band with a blue stone the exact color of his Harley, of her eyes, of the connection that had saved them both. Marry me, he signed. No preamble, no flowery speech. Not because you're dying, not because I'm grateful, but because when I imagine the future, however long or short it is, I can't imagine it without you. Marry me because you make me want to be better, because you see me, because I see you, because we found each other twice and I don't want to risk losing you again. Celeste was crying. Of course she was crying. It was their language now. But she was also laughing. Yes, she signed. Yes, yes, yes. 1,000 times. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and she signed. It's perfect. It's us. Simple and real and exactly right. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the Deaf Community Center, surrounded by kids who'd become family, by Marcus, who cried harder than anyone, by Dr. Martinez, who signed the entire ceremony for both of them. Celeste wore a simple white dress that fit her perfectly, unapologetically. Ryan wore his best jeans and a blue shirt that matched his Harley. The vows were entirely in ASL, witnessed by people who understood that love wasn't about hearing words but about seeing souls. The hotel board questioned Celeste's decision to marry her employee. Stockholders worried about scandal. Society columnists had field days with the fat deaf heiress and the janitor turned director. None of it mattered. They'd learned that people's opinions were just noise, and they'd already mastered the art of living in silence together. 5 years later, Ryan stood in that same overlook, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and amber and hope. Celeste sat on their Harley, her hair longer now, streaked with early gray. She refused to die because she'd earned every silver strand. Her body had changed, some days better, some days worse, but her spirit remained unbreakable. What are you thinking about? She signed. That night, Ryan signed back. The blind date. How close we came to missing each other. But we didn't miss each other. Celeste signed with a smile. We found each other twice. That has to mean something. It means, Ryan signed, moving to sit behind her on the bike, wrapping his arms around her waist, that some connections transcend time and circumstance and probability. It means we were always meant to find each other. It means love isn't about how much time you have. It's about what you do with the time you're given. They rode back to their home, not the mansion, which they'd converted into an accessibility resource center, but a small house near the community center where they could hear, or in Celeste's case feel, the laughter of children learning that disability wasn't limitation. That night, lying in bed, Celeste signed in the darkness, "Thank you for staying. Thank you for letting me." Ryan signed back. And in that moment, in that simple exchange, they both understood the profound truth that had carried them through everything. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It was about showing up. It was about seeing and being seen. It was about choosing each other every single day and making that choice mean something. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos, unaware that something miraculous lived in that small house. Two people who'd been broken, who'd been lost, who'd found each other against impossible odds, and decided that however much time they had was enough, because they'd spend it together, fully present, fully alive, fully in love. The blue Harley sat in the garage waiting for tomorrow's ride, and tomorrow would come, and the day after that, and the day after that. Not forever. Nothing lasted forever. But for now, for this moment, they had each other, and that was everything.